Welcome in once again. It is the Freedom Hour, clouds or not. We're here. Wish we could break this weather pattern. It's just no fun whatsoever.
We got the winter weather going.
It is the Freedom Hour on News Radio 830 KHVH. Glad you are here on another Saturday morning with our friends Gary and Doug and you with your comments and questions at 808-521-8383. The podcast, it's up as always at khvhradio.com under the Aloha Freedom Coalition. Click there and find all of our previous episodes and a new episode coming up today. And the Aloha Freedom Coalition, well, Gary Cordery, what would you like to say about the Aloha Freedom Coalition, just to start things off?
Good morning, John.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day in Hawaii. You know, to say about the Aloha Freedom Coalition, this organization is a stand for the people of Hawaii, that they would understand that they have rights, their liberties are intact, and we're here to say, exercise your liberty, walk in freedom. This is a great opportunity. Another show talking about the people's involvement in this process.
And Doug Pasnick, to your right, what would you like to say about Aloha Freedom Coalition?
You know, there's a long history of Aloha Freedom Coalition, those that have been listening to the show. And the reality is we're here because of the momentum that was created through that organization over the last 6 years. 6 years now that's been going on, maybe even 7. And it really would be, it's helpful for those that support us. You can support us at alohafreedomcoalition.org. And that helps keep the radio show going. It helps keep our movie night going. And that's the only way, or one of the ways, that we can get the voice of the people out so that we can have these hard conversations in the public forum. So thank you, John. Looking forward to having more participation through that organization.
And long-form conversations, not just sound bites, not just you get a little bit of it, you get a little bit of it. We do this every week for a full hour on a topic that really needs to be dived into, and that the TV news and even sometimes the radio news, we just can't get into the weeds on a lot. But this is the show to really dive into what's happening at the legislature, and even when the legislature's out of session, the things that are going on that affect you.
Wow, John, what a great introduction to today's show. You know, this is the new legislative session is intact. It's in play. They're starting to propose and sign bills. It is an opportunity that today we're going to discuss some of the differences between a Republican perspective of governance in Hawaii and an existing Democratic perspective.
Well, that's what it's all about today. It's not just the legislative session that obviously dominated a lot of the news cycle this week because it's brand new. You have the ceremony and the pomp and circumstance on Wednesday, and then it's the get down to work sort of vibe that's happening Thursday and Friday as some of this new legislation comes up. But as it gets going, and just as a way to enter into the topic today, is what the legislature is talking about really reflective of the people that they represent? Down to individual issues, down to bigger overarching sort of themes. We're going to dive into that today a little bit with the Freedom Hour. Once again, for the Freedom Hour, you can find the podcast at khvhradio.com and listen to previous episodes of and share them too. Big thing is that you share them. Tell your friends and family. Listen to this. We've been talking about this at our table for ages. They're talking about it, and they've got a lot more resources, and you got to hear this. You can find that at the podcast, khvhradio.com. So as we get going today, are the priorities that you see with legislators that, you know, even here locally, love the cameras, are their priorities aligned with yours? Start out with that simple question. And Doug, you're looking at me like you really want to dive in here right now and start answering that.
You know, I want to start by saying that this year and a half journey that we've been on with the radio has really been a lesson in civics. And I pray and I hope that those that are listening have gained some knowledge about how things work in our legislature. Because interestingly, that was one of the feedback items that came when the minority did an Around the Island tour recently in 2025, was that people were talking about how complex the process is. And so, I think needs to be a realization that it is a complicated process. And I just listened to a presentation by Justice Scalia where he was talking about one of the values of our constitutional republic is the fact that we have a process that takes time to work through. And there are a balance of powers. is supposed to be a balance of powers between the three branches. So between the legislative, between the executive, and between the judiciary. And so right now we've got there's a large lens right now on what's going on in the legislature. And there are things that are happening, and it's important for people to understand where their voice is in that process. And it's in two places, basically. It's in the House and it's in the Senate. And the House is the 51 members that represent, all the people that are scattered across the islands. And it's got probably the most churn because there's the most turnover in the House.
Mm-hmm.
And the Senate is where there's more longer-term representation, larger districts. There's 25 senators, and those senators provide kind of more of the stability that is supposed to come from the big square house. So knowing those two things, I think from there we can then talk a little bit more about what happened on opening day, recognizing that the voices that came from the leaders in those places are going to be somewhat representative of what those spaces, the House and the Senate, are intended to do for the people. So I hope just that kind of as a scene setter helps kind of set the stage for what was said.
Well, I think one thing to also throw in here is that the minority party, which is the Republican Party, has the most members in the House that it's had in several years. I remember they got down to less than 5 for a while, I think. And now you've got enough of a base there that they put out a 10-bill a production of their caucus saying we want to focus on these things and bring them to a vote, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's something that hasn't happened for a long time, just because of the weakness of the numbers of Republicans in that chamber.
Yeah, John, that's true. And Doug, thank you for that tee up. Doug referred to the listening tour that the Republicans had done. They started in Waianae, then across the state, across the island, ending up in Hawaii Kai. Listening to the people, asking the real questions about what's important to the people. And on the way down here this morning, driving my car from Kailua over the Pali, recognizing that the impact of legislation in this state, the way legislators understand feedback and the needs of the people, is expressed in the lives of the people. And so when I came down, I saw homeless people. I saw people bent over, laying on the ground. The fact that we have legislators who are not aware because they're not providing these listening tour type of conversations reflect the fact that we have issues, problems not solved by legislators that are actually that are part of reality, that are part of real people's lives, and it's a heartbreak. The top 3 that came out of that was cost of living, corruption, and safety, public safety. We remember we had Tim on the call last week describing somebody taking a hammer to his front and rear windshield at a traffic light. An out of control safety scenario, and these are the things that must be addressed. This is why we have public debate.
Well, to start with, we have an overarching theme that seems to be coming down both on the Republican and Democrat side nationally, but here in Hawaii it hits us even more, and that is the word affordability. Affordability. You've heard that President Trump has turned towards affordability as one of his main themes heading into 2026 in the midterm elections. And Democrats have also seized on this as well, and they've seized upon it locally. That's one of the big things we heard on Wednesday. We don't have any solid proposals yet, but I would say that with a Democrat supermajority of 42-9 in the House of Representatives, and even a worse percentage in the Senate, they can pass whatever they want to and have had the ability to do that for decades. And yet here we are talking about affordability. Is there really anything that supermajority is going to do to address that number one concern?
I think that speaks to the themes that came from both Speaker of the House Nakamura and President of the Senate Ron Kochi. Was we manage affordability through providing stability to the people of Hawaii. So affordability is a management problem, whereas the minority came and said, you know what, let's just call it what it is. Hawaii is unaffordable and it's unaccountable and it doesn't need to be that way, and this is what we can do to change that course. That was the overarching theme, I believe, of the two, opening days between what happened in the House and the Senate.
I think the opportunity for legislators to participate in the process was also on display. I actually sat in the representatives' opening ceremony. I was right in the second row in the gallery looking down and watching what was transpiring. It was very interesting. Listening to Chair Nadine Nakamura lead this conversation about everything against what was going on in the national political sphere, just basically rebuking the administration, what they're trying to accomplish, re-emphasizing the need to go to 2045, that once we achieve this panacea where everybody is going to have perfect health care, no pollution, no cars, everything was going to be fantastic. And in the middle of this conversation, they allowed legislators to actually speak. Representative Coco stands up and she begins to share and to talk about the ability of individual legislators to be heard by the chair, to have their perspective shared. And out of the blue, 5-minute recess, another legislator walks over to her, right in her face, basically tries to shut her down. So this went on for about 3 to 5 minutes. He rebukes her. He walks over and sits down. She stands up and she continues on. Another chair hits the gavel. Recess. He walks over to her again, does the same thing with another legislator, basically tells her, "You're out of line." Now, I'm making up that what was actually said. You couldn't hear this. It was very hush-hush, but it was very obvious of what was going on. Within the Democratic Party, there are those who actually want to see change. But the leadership of this party is shutting them down because they're not towing the line. She got up and did it again. They shut her down again. Then they allowed her to finish. It was such an eye-opening demonstration of political suppression, the ability to talk within their own party on the floor opening day. I thought, wow, this is really tough. The people's voice are not even being heard at the legislative session, the opportunity to engage.
Even if it's something you disagree with.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where people are marching right now saying that they live in a dictatorship and, our freedoms are being taken away, when in the state capitol, this kind of pressure is being mounted inter-party, not even like the Republican person walking over there and screaming in somebody's face.
I can't
it's
even
inter-party.
imagine if a Republican stood up and had these conversations, they'd have had the sheriff in there.
Well, I think it's interesting to show that there's definitely an internal dynamic, obviously, with what's going on in both the House and the Senate. But in that particular situation, I believe what Representative Iwamoto was identifying was there's talking points that say we have a culture of collaboration and communication, but it turns out what's happening behind closed doors is there was a prerogative of chairs to censor a particular member. And I'm not sure if they were talking about one particular member or if all committees have the ability to do this as kind of an unwritten policy. So if you follow essentially how things are supposed to work in committees and in the legislature, is there's rules. There's House rules, there's Senate rules. And what she was identifying is that this isn't one of the rules, but it's kind of like an unspoken rule. And so it sounds like there's some churn that where the optic is, hey, we are all about collaboration. But what I heard was a call out that really what's going on behind the scenes is there's the ability to shut people down. And that's disappointing. That's disappointing to hear on opening day. But you know what? I applaud her for calling out this issue and identifying it as, being transparent.
But the thing is, you were there to witness it. You were there to see it. There is no film of that.
That's right.
Right? To break the stranglehold of something like that from a communication perspective, what you do is you mock it. And she should have rolled her eyes, rolled her eyes, and then came right out to a television camera and said, this is exactly what's going on here. This is why your concerns aren't being heard. This is exactly the wrong thing to do if we are a true collaborative and everything sort of body to discuss everything. We can't do that if the pressure is coming from the top just to shut up and sit down and vote the way we intend for you to vote.
Yeah, I loved, Doug, thank you for the clear description of how it's supposed to function. But I can tell you, in the gallery, it was clearly intimidation. And it was in the public square. A shaming, if you will. And so this is the kind of political atmosphere that we're engaged in this state. It is time.
It's a state that shame actually matters, right?
Yeah, so we need liberty. We need the voice. We need representative government, and that's what this is about.
Well, and the last sad part about this is the House is supposed to be the voice of the people. And so if there is a people in the House that doesn't have a voice, then that is already being suppressed. And, there was a big claim about how these 51 representatives are the voice of the people, but how many voices are being excluded through these types of unwritten policies?
Amazing. It is the Freedom Hour on News Radio 830 KHVH, and we head to the phones. We've already got calls. Thomas is calling from here on Oahu, and Thomas, you're first up this morning. Good morning. Hold on. Thomas, are you there?
Go ahead.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I got you now. Thomas, thanks for calling in this morning.
Yeah. I just started listening to the theme of this morning's talk, and are you gentlemen aware that in 2022 the United States spent $4.5 trillion on healthcare, and we're the sickest nation of all developed nations on the planet? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, Thomas, thank you for the call. Unfortunately, I am aware of that. That's a sad commentary on what it means to have health care in this nation and health care in this state. It is not health care, it's big business.
No, exactly. And I mean, are you aware of some of the reasons why that is? Because I am. I'll tell you a little bit about me to make me back up what I'm going to say. I'm 75 years old. I haven't been to a doctor in 55 years, except for work injuries, two work injuries. Other than that, I haven't been to a doctor in 55 years. I live on the North Shore, and I still surf waves out here well over my head. So I know a little bit about health. And unfortunately, Hawaii and the legislatures in Hawaii, probably both sides, are a big part of destroying the health of this nation. Do you know why that is?
Well, I think, the why. I mean, there's certain ideological agendas that embrace big health, big insurance, and they don't actually provide for true health care. Our state's Department of Health is really not about health care. It's about managing resources and making sure that you have winners and losers.
No, I agree with that 100%, but there's a different reason that we're sick. There's a real different reason, and Hawaii has a big part to do with the sickness in the whole country. And I would like to make you aware of that and maybe discuss it a little bit.
Yeah, well, please do.
Are you guys aware that we still use paraquat in Hawaii, and that it's banned in 50 other countries?
No, I'm not aware of that.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact, and there are probably six or eight other pesticides that are sprayed no more than 3 minutes from my house here, that are also banned in 6 or 8 European countries. And so my point is, GMO, Syngenta, Monsanto, and now Bayer, they have destroyed the health of this nation with their toxic agriculture, with their GMO agriculture, with their pesticides, with their Roundup. And as I mentioned, still in Hawaii, we use paraquat, and we use 6 or 8 other pesticides that are banned in many countries around the world. And if you kill the soil, which we're doing, there's nobody in the history of the world that's done more to damage than the soil than the United States and those countries I mentioned. Nobody ever came close. I'm telling you a fact, gentlemen, and it's a concern because we why do we have the sickest population in the planet of all developed nations? It's because everybody eats food every day, and if the food's toxic and non-nutritious, if the soil's dead, you end up with what we have.
It's very important points.
I don't hear President Trump talking about it. You know what President Trump did? You know what he introduced to the Supreme Court? He introduced a bill that's similar to the vaccine bill of 1986, where they took all responsibility away from vaccine makers from injuring and killing your children. President Trump introduced a bill and had it pushed to the Supreme Court to take all responsibility away from the pesticide makers for injuring or killing you, giving you cancer or killing you or injuring you.
It's a very interesting point, Thomas, and we will get to this topic again in a future show for sure, because it is an important one.
Yeah, Thomas, you know what? Thank you for the call. And I know there are a long litany of issues. I think our intent today was to try to cover what the priorities came out from the leadership in the state. But what you've identified is definitely, there is an awareness. And I think that we need more state pressure as well as local pressure to continue to shine the light on this issue. You could talk about GMO and what's going on in Hawaii for a very long time. There are some programs that we've already done on this topic, but you're definitely bringing up a point that raises some suspicions about what policies are coming out of the national level and whether or not they're actually in the interest of the people.
Especially here in Hawaii, a state with limited land and limited resources to do farming. And it's an important thing. So I'm sure the legislature will do some agricultural stuff. They always do every year, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Well, candidly, we talked about this last week when we talked about the biosecurity bill. And really, Thomas, your point kind of ties back to that as well. Last year in the legislative session, the state gave an inordinate amount of power to the Department of Agriculture, and now it's called the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. And so I'd reflect back on that conversation. But you know what? Yes, absolutely an issue that needs to be identified, and people need to continue to watch what's happening in the legislature regarding those issues here.
Mahalo, Thomas, for the call. We're going to move over to Chris in Mililani. Chris, thanks for hanging on, and good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to talk about complexity and the affordability issue that you all have teed up already. And it's really the laws that are passed that help to complicate it. My wife and I several years ago looked at buying timeshares here in Hawaii. Why? Because she said her ideal vacation is enjoying time on the beach. And I said, do you want to get on an airplane and fly somewhere? She said, no, I just soon load the car up and travel down the road 20 minutes and be at the beach. Well, that timeshare now, I not only pay property taxes on the timeshare, but when I stay there, the government has said I have to pay tourist tax as well. So the question that I have for my government is it a second home? And I'm paying property taxes on it as a second home, or is it indeed a vacation home that's owned by someone else? And I mean, it's critical. This week, Trump said he's going to look at eliminating property taxes as an option. And if you look at property taxes being removed, those are all things that our legislatures, either at the local level or at the state level, have imposed on us to impact our quality of life. And now my staycation plans originally to stay here in Hawaii have changed. And now I'm doing my vacations off island. So my legislators have driven me off the island to enjoy my vacation time.
You're not the only one that has, maybe not in this particular circumstance exactly, but there's a lot of things that come out of the big square building that make people go, should I even be here, whether it's permanently for a vacation or whatever. And Chris, thank you for the call and the comment this morning. Gary, you were going to say something.
Well, yeah, Chris, thank you for the call. I think we're experiencing here in Hawaii exactly what the listening tour revealed. The people are tired of being overtaxed and overregulated. The government and the governor himself continue to look for ways to apply more fees and taxes to nearly every area of our lives. This TAT tax and how it's being applied. Remember, it was first supposed to be just for tourists. Then it's been made island-wide for anybody in a property. And so this application of law is taking the resources from the people. We no longer have freedom and liberty. We have taxation and no representation. And this is the call. This is the time for the people to actually get engaged, get involved with their legislators and say, I'm a voter. Your policies are not serving the people. It's time for you to change policy or be moved out of office.
Well, let's get to the actual, what we're talking about. Is the legislature's priority stuff that matters for Hawaii that people are feeling, or is it just more big grand schemes or big grand plans? Because scheme is just a synonym for plan when you come down to it. I didn't mean to make it an evil sounding thing, but is it big overarching things or is specific things? Even this week, Wallet Hub, the organization that does nothing but polling, they came out with their list of the best and worst states to start a small business. Hi, everybody. We're number 48.
48 out of 50?
Out of 50,
Oh,
yes.
wow, okay, I wasn't sure.
Still 50 now, for now.
Yeah.
Only Maryland, right there on the cusp of Washington, D.C., and Rhode Island are worse than Hawaii to start a small business. This isn't like, Republican naysay. This is just fact. Okay? And you talk to anybody who runs a small business, which is a lot of you, dependent on tourism or otherwise, and they'll tell you what an incredible burden it is. The different taxes, the different rules, the different regulations, seemingly either conflicting or useless, and that all comes from your state capital here in downtown Honolulu.
That comes from public policy. So, when you think about the implementation of public policy and the impact on starting a business in Hawaii, I'm surprised that we're 48. I've heard other organizations say that we're number one, the worst state.
Number 50, I guess.
Number 50. The number 50, the worst state in the nation for private business to survive in this, not only just to start, but to maintain and actually become profitable over a season. I think that Governor Green's declaration just the other day said, well, I'm excited for the state of the state. I'm going to be able to tell the people of how we're going to use that $100 million, that TAT tax that we're collecting, how we're going to use that to sustain our state. I'm thinking to myself, really, what exactly does that mean? He's going to share. But in reality, will it actually sustain anything other than his agenda? I have my doubts.
Well, you know what, John, to your point, what came out in opening day comments was very broad from the speaker and from the president of the Senate. And they address issues that are definitely highlighted by the people, but there were no real-term solutions. Gary mentioned earlier the 2045 timeline, and it was actually Speaker Nakamura that said, hey, last year we got together as the majority and we came up with the priorities, and we're going to get there by 2045. And in her speech in the House, she specifically mentioned these things: housing, taking care of Native Hawaiians, social safety nets, expanding workforce development, enhancing the tax revenue framework, and diversifying and strengthening Hawaii's economy. And President Kauchi said the same thing, but they all said it with, we're going to get there in 2045. What I heard from the minority was, here are some real-term, in-close, tangible ways that we're going to do that. So what's interesting is there's alignment between the majority and the minority about things that we agree on, like housing, for example. But what I heard from the minority was, here's how we're going to do it. And what I heard from the majority was, we'll get there someday, like 20 years from now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't think that there would be that sort of alignment with a specific year. Because that's been, I think people forget that how many years ago did we pass the thing about no petroleum fueled vehicles in 2045, or how many years ago was that? 10 years ago now?
Well, depends on how you look at it, but the most recent example of that is the Navahin lawsuit. We've talked about that on this show before, where 12 young individuals from Hawaii brought a suit against the state that said that the Hawaii Department of Transportation was not going to meet the green energy objectives, and they were going to destroy their future. So they went into an agreement before the case was ever heard, and they reached a settlement. And now you have, if you look at your vehicle registration, there's a new line on the bottom of your vehicle registration, and it's got a box for number of miles driven, and it says RUC. Well, what does RUC stand for? It stands for road use charge. So you haven't been charged yet, but you're going to get charged for it in the future. And that's how these policies, like Gary has alluded to, equate to then becoming actual taxes on the people that are going to make cost of living in Hawaii less affordable.
Oh, good. Another tax. Can't wait.
Well, so WHO has laid out this agenda globally, the 2040, 2045, the 2050 agenda. We locally are bound to the 2030 agenda. It's very common. It's no longer hidden in the weeds. It's in your face. There's public policies that have been put in law. It's going back to the year 2000, even earlier. The slow, step-by-step, lawful implementation of policy that's going to provide for the 2030 agenda, an agenda where we're, quote, carbon-free. 2045, by law, the state of Hawaii is to be carbon-free. So it's interesting. I was on the North Shore. We were cleaning the beach in Kahuku. I walked out and there's the wind farms. I thought, interesting. Is this the solution to carbon-free environment? Out of about 12 or 14 of the big windmills running, 2 were moving slowly on a nice blustery day. So these policies, although they're articulated by global organizations like the WHO and others, how the world is going to collapse, we're going to implode as a planet if we don't deal with carbon. Hundreds of millions of dollars here locally are being used to implement these policies.
A drop in the bucket nationwide, right?
Yeah, globally it's nothing.
Yeah.
And so these are the kinds of public policies that are being implemented through the legislative agenda, ensuring that Hawaii will be quote unquote carbon free. And as Doug mentioned, you'll be buying carbon credits to drive your car.
Because go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, because in order to get to that objective, and the Department of Transportation said this, they said they need to put 1 million electrical vehicles on the road by 2040 or 24. I think it's 2040 in order to get to reduce the carbon by the amount that we need to reduce it by. So you can't do the math on that and make it make sense, right? There's not 1 million drivers in Hawaii. There's probably not 1 million cars that are on the roads in Hawaii. And if they all were electrical, then what's the impact on the electrical grid? That's a whole nother story. But the point is, if you can't get there, how do you offset carbon? You have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. And this is like, if there's one thing to bang your fist on the table about is that's how it's going to translate into more taxes on the people. So when the GOP went around the island and the people said cost of living, what they're not seeing and what they're feeling is all these little incremental taxes that are coming in all of these different ways that are slowly impacting it becoming less and less affordable.
I think it's an absolute travesty to have legislation enacted that takes effect far after people are dead or out of the legislature. I think that is it's the worst policy ever, or giving a target date to do something. Just give me 30 seconds here. There's no way on this planet this island will be 100% or near it, anywhere near that, for electric vehicles in 2045. That's less than 20 years away. You don't have the power. You don't have the grid, the solid grid, to support all those electric vehicles. And so what Doug was saying, it's going to come down to that. But I want to tie this back into what we're talking about here today. Specific policy proposals that help the people or big grand visions. You heard on Wednesday, both of you personally heard at the legislature, big grand visions. What are some of the specific policy proposals that we are looking at from the minority party or anywhere else that actually address things that people are experiencing? And one of them is crime. One of them is homeless people, despite the billions we've thrown at that, still all over the place. What are some specific proposals that we know are coming out this early in the session? I know we'll get to more as the session gets longer, but we're just here in this first weekend after the opening. Is there anything specific on the table?
Yeah, I think there really are. And I appreciated the fact that the Republican legislators, have identified common sense policies that will actually support the people. One in particular, we've heard now for at least a decade now, to remove GET from food and medicine. They are now proposing that again. They've proposed it in the past. It's actually one of my proposals as well, that this regressive tax needs to go away. We're only one of 2 states that actually taxes food and medicine. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly optional, and it's regressive. You pay it tier after tier. It needs to go away. It's 4.712%. It will make a difference. It will actually save around almost $700 a year for a typical family. So there are those kinds of proposals. And then there's also safety, security proposals. There's a new bill that they're suggesting that would be about protecting the kapuna from crime, like higher and more just penalties for crimes made against kapuna, much similar to the one that you mentioned in the tee-up, the lady who was knocked out by somebody coming on the stand.
No, we were talking, yes. So that's one of the big stories. If you look at a couple of different news sites today, the legislature is going to, it already has apparently almost half the House as a sponsor, this thing called Natalie's Law, which is Natalie Iwamoto. She was the athletic director, or is the athletic director at Moanalua High School, who was knocked out by a parent of a student as she was escorting referees to their car. And of course, that, it's a horrible crime. It also is a spotlight crime. The legislature takes action when the lights get hot on a specific topic. So that's why I was asking about specific topics, because a lot of this stuff, like the food and tax thing, because it's been brought up so much, I think people already think that it's, despite the fact they go to the grocery store and they see tax added, they think, oh, we've might have taken care of this already, or there was a cut or whatever. But you're saying, no, it's a proposal that's still out there.
No, it's in full force, you know. And it's much more complex than you think. And I think if I'm on the neighbor island and I'm paying GE tax to build the rail, I'm pulling my hair out. Right? I mean, they're literally, we have GE tax to pay the rail. And by the way, there's a current proposal to extend that to 2050. Now, remember, this was a temporary tax. Of course, a tax in the state of Hawaii is never temporary.
A tax anywhere is almost never, even if the people vote on it, it's almost never temporary. We got a caller. We got Steve over in Kailua who wants to chime in. So reach over here. Steve, good morning. Thank you for listening to the Freedom Hour.
You're welcome, and thanks for putting it on. I'm a small business owner, and if I don't make at least $100 a day and work 365 days a year, I can't make just to stay alive. Now, we just had a legislature that nobody knows who it was, got $35,000 in one shot. How in the world do we keep giving these people raises? The union says we're going on strike. The bus is going to go on strike. And it always happens right before the election time, so everybody gets rewarded. And if we don't do something, tax dollars paying for tax-paid positions don't create anything. All they do is drain our resources, and that's one of our biggest problems, because when all those people get raises and none of the rest of us, I have to work harder to get a raise. I have to make $200 a day. Most of my money goes to gas. I'm in the construction industry, and I've been paying $5 for premium since COVID, and it used to be at $5.75. Why can't these people quit spending money? They need to have a moratorium on spending because, like you said, Josh Green makes new taxes, and the money is already spent before we pay it. Thank you, and have a great day. Aloha.
Thank you much for the call, Steve. Gary.
Steve, great question. I'm a contractor myself, so I can appreciate your pain. I can tell you, until we have accountability in this government, a restraint on unregulated spending, we will never have abundance. It is an absolute fundamental truth that until government officials, policymakers have to account for the use of the people's resources, you will always have unprecedented corruption, mismanagement of funds. It is time for the people to recognize that it's their voice who are putting these people into places of responsibility and authority. They must change. You must change the governor's seat and ensure that you have people who understand that they are to represent their representative servants of the people.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here because this is a sore subject right now, not just nationally, but locally. Nationally, it's been, the fraud in social services. But here in Hawaii, everybody's heard the story, $35,000. Steve just brought it up in a paper bag to an unnamed legislator, and now it's actually going to be the Attorney General says that they're going to do a state investigation, and it's backed up by the governor, and we're going to find out who this is and all this stuff. You heard that story earlier this week. It all speaks to a fundamental feeling that if you play by the rules, you are a sucker. You are a sucker for not taking everything you can possibly get, whether it's a little bit legal, a lot illegal, or whatever, because the hammer of punishment doesn't come down. As governor, as somebody in power, what do you think should be the policies going forward dealing with corruption? I don't care if it's in the governor's office or the legislature, or if it's some rules wonky person in the Department of Health or any of the Department of Transportation, anywhere. What should be the policy, just overarching, for corruption in government?
Great question. I think one of the issues that we face in Hawaii is we have appointed attorney general and appointed sheriff and the judiciary that's appointed by the governor. Until you have those positions elected by the people, particularly the attorney general. So as governor, we're going to promote the CONCON being used to ensure that the attorney general, the sheriff, the Office of Elections, Chief Executive Officer, and the Board of Education are elected by the people so that they have a voice that's not partisan. In addition, we must audit an outside state auditors every agency in this state. Currently, we audit, but you have a state auditor auditing a state agency. So guess what you get? You get the perfect outcome you prefer, or you get no outcome at all. So I am grateful that the Attorney General came out and said, oh, we're going to talk about this brown bags to stardom. But may I just say 35,000 is nothing. You might take 35,000 and times it by 1,000, and then you might be talking about the level of corruption and the waste and mismanagement of the people's resources. And until we have honest auditing, accountable, and then you have an Attorney General that will actually apply the constitutional commitment for safety, security, and equal justice, we're not going to see change. You must have these things in place.
And the thing is, it's not rare anymore here in Hawaii. The 35,000, that's just this year's. Jay Kalani English, up the river for a while because of stuff like this. And same thing with the other guy that got caught with him. And there's been other circumstances over the years that show the corruption that occurs in that building. It is not just an issue for Minnesota or Ohio or New York or California. It's here. And I don't see any specific proposals right now to deal with it.
You might not see a proposal, but what we see across the nation right now, and what I can't imagine isn't happening in Hawaii in some fashion, is that local individuals are doing the work. They're doing the hard work to investigate, and they're revealing some of these frauds that, unfortunately, people in government have been calling out in different states for a long time. The story in Minnesota has been going on for 10 to 15 years, and people have come forward and said they have identified these issues, but government wouldn't act on it because it was too politically sensitive. I thought Senator Ava's comments in the Senate basically addressed these issues. He straight up recognized leverage is more important than merit in determining the outcome of legislation. And you know what? It was refreshing to have someone come and call it what it was and come out and just basically say, these are the issues, this is how it works. And there's all kinds of institutional hypocrisy in both the House and the Senate. And the only way that the big square building is going to gain any trust is by individual integrity coming back to the table. I want to do a call out, though, to Thomas and Steve and Chris, because the way that we can get to practical solutions is for you and others to just pick one issue. So, I appreciate Thomas's call. I know we didn't have time to go into great detail about it, but if what's going on with Hawaii agriculture is your issue, then we need you to become the champion for that issue. The reality is not enough people are stepping up to highlight these ideas. And I know I'm not sure what other work you might be doing behind the scenes, but what I would encourage is just pick that one thing and follow that one committee. There is a committee in the House and the Senate that's devoted to agricultural issues. So if you would follow that and then submit testimony and encourage others to submit testimony, that will move the needle. And the last piece of that is reach out to your local representative and reach out to your local senator to make sure that they know that you are concerned about this issue. But if we just talk about it on the radio, it's never going to go anywhere. And if we just complain about it, it won't go anywhere. We need tangible action, and that action has to come from people who are concerned. I heard the passion in Chris's in his story. I heard the passion in Thomas's story and Steve's story as well. They can move the needle, but they actually have to do it. We can't do it on the radio for anyone.
And remember, if you're not moving the needle in the direction for your perspective, there's always somebody moving the needle in the other direction. And a lot of times, you hear the word lobbyist. Hawaii is not immune to lobbyists. We got plenty of them crawling all over that building, advocating for their side.
That's right. When I was down at the Square House at opening day, there were a lot of lobbyists walking around. I talked to a number of them. I said, "What are you guys doing here today?" "Oh, we're here to lobby." Mm-hmm. There were large representations of local unions there, all dressed in the same gear. They're going to go around to every legislator, go into every office, and make sure that relationship is nurtured and ensure that the legislators know that they're there. And what has to happen? Doug mentioned it thoughtfully. It's the individual citizen who understands they have individual rights that must step up and engage their political leaders and say, our voice is the one that matters. not the lobbyist voice, individual. We would lobby together in unity. And this is why people actually are disengaged. 50% of the people don't vote. And the reason why? My vote doesn't matter. What's the point? That mentality. We must change the mentality and actually get people to enroll, engage, and activate in the process. They gotta. If I was a sports person, a metaphor would be get out of the bleachers and get onto the field. Everybody has the right. We just had a meeting the other day. After the meeting, a man who had just retired, we had a conversation. We talked. He said, "I'm one of the 50% that's never voted in my entire life." And he went on to say, I am now going to vote. I had no idea how important my vote was. And it was such a powerful demonstration of once people understand what's at stake, they engage and they will transform the state one by one.
I was just looking here. Aloha State Daily actually has a good rundown of the House Minority Caucus's 28 bills. So the minority caucus, the 9 Republicans, they were the most active in advancing. Here's what we want. And some of the 28 bills, I'm going to be honest with you, we're not eliminating the state income tax anytime soon. Not with a Democrat supermajority, okay? But it's a holdover from 2025. There's some other ones that got held over from 2025, which to me are absolutely common sense and would be very popular with Democrat support too. I mean, first of all, Bill HB 286 would increase the maximum annual tax deduction for individual housing accounts. HB 295 would allow people in the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to bequeath their wait list position. You talk about a sore subject. That's a sore subject. But bequeath their wait list position to the next of kin. How is this not something, what, you just want generations of people to be on that wait list forever? This seems very, very common sense, and not to cheerlead for one side or another, but there's a lot of these bills that languish and they die because of what you were talking about. Nobody calls up their legislator and says, "I support this. That you should get this done. Shepherd this through for me. This is somebody on that wait list, or a bunch of people on that wait list should be right in people's faces getting that done." Yes, it's proposed by the House Republicans, but it's common sense.
It's common sense. And you're right. Most of the bills that they've put forward would have unanimous support if they weren't introduced by a Republican. The fact of the matter is they have never had a bill pass. Did you know that?
No.
They've submitted bills 2 times?
20 years.
20 years. In 20 years, the Republican caucus has never had a bill passed in the legislative branch. And you telling me after 20 years there's no good ideas? No. This is about control, status quo.
Putting you in your place.
Put you in your place, status quo, don't ruffle the feathers. Let's not listen to the people. Let's listen to the agenda. And this is why, and you articulated it so well, John, the people have the authority and the power to engage. The only thing that representatives listen to, the vote. Do I get to keep my job? So I encourage you out there, if you're listening, it is time for you to come out of the bleachers and get onto the field. Participate in this process. Call your legislators. Go online. Find out what bills are out there, what matters to you. And Doug articulated it perfectly. Certain things matter to certain people. If you're a parent, you want to ensure that this proposed bill to remove your religious exemption, your non-medical or religious exemption, to keep your keiki from having to take a vaccine to engage in public education, that's going to be on the table again. The people have got to step up.
With a whole lot of lobbyist support behind it.
Yeah, there's a lot of money there.
But it's when the people make a stir and the heat gets hot and people realize, oh, my God, you're going to pass this thing? Yeah. It's the same thing years ago when they wanted to lower the standards for being in jail. I forget exactly what it was, but basically it was, during COVID, the whole, let people out of jail and let these dangerous people out of jail. And people stood up against actually codifying that and making that some sort of permanent policy. Legislators know when they're doing wrong, but sometimes there's an irresistible call to do a favor, or worse, hello, money in paper bags, and they do things that they know the people that are being governed are going to hate, but they do it anyway. Your voice is what stands up against that.
I just want to make 2 points, and that is in Senator Abbas' speech, he mentioned the work that he has been doing actually in the last couple of years to try to get a bill passed that would limit foreign ownership in Hawaii. He also spoke to the demographic decline of Hawaiians in Hawaii and how important it is for the people that live here to own their land, not foreigners to come in and buy it. But the bill was shot down multiple times by the majority party as being unconstitutional. And he told this story, and I don't want to get it wrong, but basically what he said is he traded a vote with Senator Rhodes. And once Senator Rhodes took the charge on promoting that bill, it tracked all the way through the Senate. But once it bounced over to the House, because they knew it had Republican backing, it was a Republican-generated bill, it got caught up in the quagmire of the House, and it didn't make it any further. So it really speaks to the leverage that individuals have and how things are actually getting done in the legislature. That things that might make sense, like limiting foreign ownership in Hawaii, we see what's happening in the mainland with foreign ownership in and around different bases and ports and things like that should be concerning. You've got Senator here who has actively taken a charge to try to make that happen, and he's not been successful. The last thing I really want to mention quickly is that if you follow the Elections Commission, there's been all kinds of calls for an audit. But what didn't come out in the opening day, there's no audit happening for the Office of Elections. The Office of Elections has never been audited in this state, and there's been no call from the legislature, despite all of the calls from the people to do an audit.
Unbelievable. Stupid tribalism.
Actually, there was a request for an audit by the Office of the Election, and the auditor said we decline. It wasn't like they didn't have a request. They had a request from the proper agency to perform an accurate and authentic audit, and the auditor, no thank you, we're not interested in that conversation.
Unreal. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. By the way, big mahalo to Tanya and to Mary Lynn for their donations that keep the Freedom Hour on the air and, of course, support discussions of big issues and specific things that affect your life. And as we come down to the final minute, Gary, what do you want to say as the legislative session gains steam, or reiterate as the legislative session gains steam and some crazy things get proposed and some really good things get proposed?
I would say for the people, be disciplined. Don't be overwhelmed by what looks to be so complex. There are easy ways to acquire the knowledge and how to participate. It is a discipline.
Run a business and not thinking about radio? Think again. Because more people are listening to the radio on iHeart today than they were 20 years ago. And only iHeart Broadcast Radio connects with more Americans than TV, digital, social, any other media. Even twice as many teens than TikTok. And that reach means everything. Just think about the universal marketing formula. The number of consumers who hear your message times the response rate equals the results. Now let's get those results growing for your business. Radio's here now more than ever, and iHeart's leading the way. Think radio can help your business? Think iHeart. Streaming, podcasting, and radio, where the reach is real. Let us show you at iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com. Or call 844-844-iHeart. One more time, just call 844-844-iHeart and get radio working for you.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin, redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
persistent struggle to engage with our government. It is difficult. It's not an accident that we have a wall around that house. Step forward, participate, engage. Let's hoolie the system. Let's change direction.
Doug, one last word?
I want to thank our callers today, specifically Thomas, for your passion. Just follow your passion and do something about it, and I think we can move the needle. The things that are happening at the national level aren't always right, but the things that are happening in our state aren't always right either. And right now, the progress needle is kind of running on empty, and so we can get there. We just need your help to do it.
The government that is closest to the people is most responsive to the people.
That's right.
Some founding father said that. I remember reading it. I think it was Jefferson.
Something about wisdom is good for everybody.
That's right. It is the Freedom Hour every Saturday morning on News Radio 830 KHVH and on your iHeartRadio app and on the podcast. Find us there on khvhradio.com. Aloha, guys.
Mahalo. Thank you for everybody listening.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Military life isn't predictable, but earning your master's degree can be. With American Military University's 40-plus flexible online master's programs, you can stay mission-ready while you get market-ready. Learn anywhere, anytime, with an education built to keep pace, steady, reliable, and always accessible. Plus, military service members, veterans, and their families can save up to 45% on master's tuition with AMU's special rates and grants. Learn more at amu.apus.edu. Steady through every mission.
With a Mercedes-Benz certified pre-owned vehicle, you can indulge in unparalleled luxury. And with a thorough inspection and certification process, you can indulge without compromise. Find yours at mbusa.com/CPO.